Hello and welcome back to another episode of KSP 134, 35. Honestly lost count, uh, even though I just put it up on YouTube for the stream, but anyways, I digress. We're picking up where we left off. However, I do have to inform you that I did off-screen go ahead and get rid of some with this vessel when it's closer out to its Apple Apsis to begin the rescue mission. So we'll take care of that, and then be on our way to finish this up. And probably by the time we return to Kerbin, we'll still have enough time in the remaining time for the episode to begin to prepare for what is to come next, which, based on the fact that somehow, even though I know we didn't, we did a flyby of Val and Lath in the Joule system. I'm gonna guess it's gonna send us to one of those two places, which is rather unfortunate because it keeps sending us to the harder locations in Joule, like Lath, Val, and Tylo being the hardest one. Those three are the moons closest to Joule, which means they require more Delta V to do anything at all with, making them a little bit more difficult. So hopefully it doesn't do that, but I really get the feeling that it's going to. Now, as soon as we are lined up with this vessel, I'm going to cut the time warp right now and put the focus back on Kerbin, zoom in, and find out where the Mun is in relation to everything. Just like I did at the end of the last episode, I'm going to warp until the Mun is where it needs to be. You can actually see its communication line now, which is great. Alright, and then we're going to go back to the Space Center and launch another vessel out to rescue those Kerbals and finally bring them home from the surface of Tylo. Because we are primarily focused on getting a hold of that vessel that actually made it to the surface, which is the command pod, because that's all that remains from that mission, and getting that command pod home. That's primarily what we're after here. Now, in order to do that, we need to go to the launch pad and prepare ourselves for this, which we will do by grabbing the J2A again. It might be overkill, but I'm not going to take any chances this time. And we are going to launch that from the Mun launch site and make our way out into a solar orbit to grab that vessel and bring it home and figure out where we need to go so we can prepare to do that in this episode, and then in the next episode we'll be ready to launch out for our next mission out to whatever moon it decides to send us out to in the Joule system. Now, to do this, we need to kind of do what we did in the solar station rendezvous and docking episode. We need to match its orbit. We already have it in line pretty much, so now it's just a matter of getting this thing into Mun orbit and make the transfer to the rendezvous point with that vessel, dock up and bring it home. Now, before I decided to stream today, like I said, I did that off camera, in between, while I was on that little break, in between the last episode and the current episode. Let's go ahead and get this thing going. At this point, we should know how to do this pretty well. I spent up the rest of the fuel that was in that tank, so once we get there, we're going to have to undock from that tank and then dock to this vessel, which will leave the J2A craft, like the one we're sending now, in a solar orbit. Just dispose of it when we're done. Since it doesn't have any relays on it, it's effectively a dud, just floating around in space for no apparent reason, with no fuel or any purpose at all. So once we're done here, we'll get rid of that. Or once we get there and rendezvous up with it, we'll undock from that, get rid of it, dock up with this, and bring it home. That's pretty much the mission for the stream, as well as preparing for the next mission. Once we get back, we'll know what that mission is going to be. I am playing on the PS4, playing the Enhanced Edition, so therefore we don't get to use any mods. I keep hearing something about them possibly bringing support for mods to the Xbox, but outside of that, there is no mod support for the console. that to hit 50,000, and in the process I'm going to go ahead and set that vessel as our target as soon as I find out where it is. I believe it's out here. Yes, it is. Okay, let's set that as the target. And if I'm not mistaken, we are not only going to... Okay, yeah, it looks like we are going to make orbit before we do the transfer. Okay, so that's over 5,000 meters from the surface of the Mun, so we can go ahead and time warp over to the apoapsis. I'll give it about a minute to realign itself now. Once we get there, give it about a minute to realign itself, because it'll take just a little bit of time there to realign back to the prograde mark, so we can circularize around the moon, and then line ourselves up with our target vector and go ahead and make that transfer and get this rescue mission done, bring those Kerbals home, and finally be done with all the Tylo missions. Now, I'm going to let it do its thing. And just wait for it to do that before we can continue on. Hey there, just a drawer, a friend from Instagram that I follow. Definitely recommend checking out some of the content they have on their Instagram. Oh, thank you. Alright, we are almost locked onto our prograde mark again. We are just a little beyond our apoapsis, but that is okay. It will not take a whole lot to circularize, which we will go ahead and do. As soon as that wraps around, we will go ahead and time warp over to where the prograde and target mark will be lined up. Whoa, that was awfully fast. But looks like we're almost right where we need to be. That's okay then. Let's make sure we didn't completely lose our window here. Looks like we could actually stand to orbit around one more time, so accidents can be a good thing sometimes. Let's go ahead and get this lined up. And as soon as we are lined up, let's cut that time warp and allow that to reorient to the prograde, which should be nice and in line with the target mark, if not close to it, where it needs to be. See, we're on the dark side now, but thankfully we have some nukes in this thing to take care of our power needs. And the second that we are locked onto that prograde mark, it is time to burn and make our way out to that vessel and bring them home finally. At that point, it's just a matter of making sure that we have the appropriate window to return to Kerbin. But we'll have tons of Delta V to be able to play around with and just brute force our way back home if necessary. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and zoom out now in preparation for this. By the time we're zoomed out, we should be locked onto that prograde mark. And we're fairly close to being in line with it. I'm going to go ahead and slowly throttle. Now it's just a matter of getting ourselves that encounter. And our degree of inclination should be pretty spot on because we did correct the J2's degree of inclination relative to Kerbin down to 0, making it a 90-degree inclination on the HDG mark on our navbar there, which is actually a degree off the way that we are doing it, but this will be fine. We just need to keep burning until we get that encounter. nodes here. Let's make it happen. Any SpaceX fans that are watching this should probably recognize this music. It's from Test Shot Starfish. Sorry, Test Shot Starfish. It's one of the tracks that I really enjoy hearing on some of their launches. It's called Flight Proven. Looks like we're going to be nailing it down on the Intersect 2 node. So we'll take that once it's right over top of the target node. Cut off. That's not too bad on the distance there. Let's go ahead and warp out of the Mun sphere of influence so we can try to get a better beat on this. Let's see what our ascending node is telling us. Okay, so we could stand to actually lower that down just a wee bit. So let's go towards the anti-normal mark and try to make that a little better before we continue on. And we'll time warp completely around back to this intersect node and reduce our relative speed, which is going to take about 4,500 meters per second of delta V. We'll reduce that and then make our approach and rendezvous up with that vessel, dock up, and find the best spot to make our return transfer back to Kerbin from and bring them home from there. And hopefully it won't take up too much time in the episode so we can find out what we have to do after this, where we're going, and how to do it, and create the vessel necessary to prepare for everything that we're going to need to do in that mission, which, depending on where we're going, no matter where we're going, we're going to have to prepare a station core to send out to it first with relayability. That way we can send out another vessel to dock up with that, transfer between the vessels, knocking out the rendezvous, transfer between vessels, and the docking, as well as building a station, quote unquote. And then it will just be a matter of grabbing all the science necessary from the location, as well as landing and returning from the location. And again, now that we've knocked out Tylo, the rest of the moons will be much easier, so at least there's that. Now let's try to reduce that ascending node down closer to 0. We'll keep burning until it's right on top of the intersect. Close enough, it's still in 0, so we'll take it. Now, we may be able to do either radio in or radio out to narrow down our separation there a little bit better like we normally do. So let's go ahead and try to do that a little bit. And once we're done with that, we'll time warp around to it. Once it's as close as possible, we'll take what we can get and then kill our relative speed off once we arrive there, and then set up the rendezvous and docking from there. So we'll begin by burning radio in and see what we can get with that. Now, what's our apoapsis relative to its apoapsis out here? It's 38.2 billion. Ours is 31.6. That's interesting. Even if we add that much distance into separation, it still wouldn't match its apoapsis. It's kind of interesting. Okay, we should be locked on to the radio in node here within about 5 more seconds, and then we'll find out if it is going to be the node that we need to be locked on and burn on to try to reduce this separation just a bit more. So let's find out. It's another SpaceX related song. It's a untitled track that they use from time to time, and they're pretty much my absolute favorite one, that is used in every episode of Space Eccentric, previously known as Cloud Licker 69, is SpaceX in a News series. It's a very great series to keep up to date on everything SpaceX related. I recommend following Space Eccentric for all of your SpaceX news and updates, but there are a great deal of people out there to follow and keep up with, but he's a pretty excellent dude. Alright, so that was indeed what we needed to make this separation a little tighter. And we brought it in fairly close. It's going to be a little difficult to narrow that down any more than we have. So we're just going to keep that for now and just go ahead and time warp over to that location and kill off our relative velocity from there. Considering that we have 6 vector engines surrounding a mammoth, I believe? No, the rhino. We have 3 on this side, 3 vectors on this side, and the rhino here in the middle, so that's a lot of thrust to weight. And it would be very difficult unless we cut off all 6 of those vectors and reduce the thrust limiter on the rhino down fairly low. We would be able to get this encounter down nice and tight. However, we are still going to have to kill off 4,600 meters per second of delta V upon arrival. So we'll just take what we have now instead of trying to finagle that. And then once we arrive, we'll kill that relative velocity and set ourselves to lock onto the target node and bring ourselves in closer and get our rendezvous, and then we'll make our docking. Once we get all that done, we'll bring this vessel home. Get a little bit of fuel there myself. That was tasty. Let's keep an eye on this as we wrap around. See, there's the J2, the vessel that we're after. Here's the J2A again, the vessel that we used last time to get that thing out of Tylo orbit and into the orbit where it is now. Did not have enough delta V to pull off the return home, which was rather unfortunate, but we can do it in this episode. Let's see, as we are slowing down, we are speeding up to get to this apoapsis. That's, set the target mode, no wonder. Okay, in orbit mode, we are slowing down as we approach the apoapsis. Then we'll pick our speed back up as we quote-unquote fall towards our periapsis. As the J2 is speeding up, our speed should start to get relatively close to matching at about this point. And there they are. It's fairly close, but from the distance that they are going to travel from this spot and this spot down to here, their relative speed is going to change. This vessel that we're in right now is going to pick up 4,600 meters per second more velocity than the J2 is as it's approaching its periapsis. Now, the reason being, if I'm not mistaken, the J2 vessel that we're heading towards is going to be past its periapsis, therefore it's going to start slowing down as it comes through here. But we are still going to be approaching our periapsis with this vessel, so we're still going to be speeding up, which is why we need to slam on the brakes and kill that speed upon arrival to try to match its orbit a little more closely, and then we'll bring ourselves in, covering that distance. And whatever speed we pick up to cover that distance, we're going to have to kill off once we get there, relative to its orbit, to completely finalize and match its orbit down to a T so we can dock up to it. And then from there, it's just a matter of stabilizing our orbit and finding the best transfer window to get back to Kerbin and doing a retro burn, as our degree of inclination relative to Kerbin will already be at 0 degrees and inclination, so that'll take care of that, and we'll just have to do our retro burn once we are lined up properly to make the transfer back to Kerbin. Now we should be arriving here within the next 15 to 20 seconds, maybe less, and then we're going to kill off that speed. We're only 1,000 kilometers away from it. It's actually not very far in the grand scheme of things here in a solar orbit, but we're still 4 days away. Let's try to bring that in a little closer. It's not going to take 4 days to kill off 4,600 meters per second of delta V. Let's Still a few hours away. It's not going to take that long to do that either. Let's continue to time warp in a little closer. As we get closer and closer, just bringing down that distance by millions of meters per minute there. Let's try to get it nice and close. Let's see, that's T-minus 10 minutes away at that point, once we arrive. I'm going to kill the auto warp and just do it manually because that's taking longer than I want. And we'll cut it right there. Alright, now let's go ahead and let it reorient itself to retrograde relative to the target. Make sure we're in target mode for that. Now, I seriously doubt we're going to be able to see this thing where it's so far away. If we were trying to, we would be looking below us to the left relative to the sun or Kerbal. So it would be like over here somewhere. But it's so far away we can't get a target node. Now it's just a matter of reducing our speed, our velocity relative to the target to 0, then targeting the target node itself and bringing ourselves in from there, which won't be very difficult at all. We are going to have to go through this stage as well as this stage, and perhaps those as well, leaving only the top stage to dock up and return with, but that's going to be more than enough to do so. And the upside is, instead of coming into the atmospheric Kerbin at over 7,000 meters per second and killing our Kerbals, this will be a much safer re-entry, where we're not coming in at such a high speed or from the distance out as far as Joule. Now, let's go ahead, now that we are pretty much locked on to that retrograde mark in target mode, let's go ahead and kill that relative speed off. Cannot wait to get rid of this stage. Those vector engines and their gambling just make it so unstable sometimes. We have about 1,500 meters per second of delta V to burn through to get to that point. I'm going to try to kill the rotation and stabilize this thing as much as possible. That doesn't mess with our degree of inclination a whole lot. Just preemptively moving the nav ball target mark, our reticle there, trying to keep it as stable as possible. So I'll even disengage the SAS and re-engage it to restabilize if necessary, then lock back onto the target mark. As we burn for quite a few minutes here to reduce our relative velocity. But you'll see as we do that, I'll just go to the map view and show you our orbit. Due to where the retrograde mark is relative to our target, you're seeing our apoapsis shift over here and increase at a certain point. It will have to increase out to 38 million or billion meters. And you'll also see our periapsis here shift down to this location. Looks like we just got an encounter with something. I believe it was Kerbin. Hopefully it's not going to take 3,600 meters per second of delta V to get that back. But we'll find out. I'm really hoping that we have a good bit of delta V remaining after we're done with this, so that we can stabilize the orbit instead of having an eccentric orbit to make our return with. But we don't always get what we want in space. It's not that easy. Unless we plan for it and plan it down to a T, which with this recent Tylo set of missions, it hasn't exactly been easy to do that. But again, Tylo is one of the harder locations to pull this stuff off. You can pull it off at Tylo. The next big thing will be Eve, but we won't get to that for a while. We've already done enough at Eve for now. Let's go ahead and continue on with our midsection here. hopefully by the time we're done burning through it, we will have killed off our relative velocity. The central stage, if not central, and possibly 2 of the outer stages remaining. But we'll find out. Shift our orbit and set ourselves up for a nice, easy transfer to our target. And there's the apparatus starting to rise back up again as it makes its way out to 38.2 billion meters. So we kill our relative velocity to match the orbit of the J2 craft that we are recovering. About 19 meters per second left to burn. We should have staged already. Really need to get better about keeping an eye on that, don't I? Anyways, still plenty of delta V. Good thing about this midsection stage, it has tons of thrust to weight. And so therefore it's going to reduce the amount of time it's going to take to do this exponentially compared to that first larger bottom stage was, or what it was. It did maximize the fuel on this stage if I'm not mistaken, so therefore it's not going to have as much thrust to weight. You can check the mass and find out. It's 111 tons or so now, so it probably started at about 115 tons, and the mainsail in space can push about 150 tons. So its thrust to weight shouldn't be too bad now as it continues to burn more fuel. See, it's not entirely efficient, but it has more fuel, and as it burns through that fuel, it'll burn a little faster. But it also allows it to burn longer because of the extra fuel. But we are going to kill off our relative speed a little before we run out of delta V in this stage. Now that we're approaching less than 400 meters per second in relative speed, it's almost time to kick that off. But we need to get this as close to 0 meters per second relative to the target vessel as possible. That way, when we try to transfer over to the target vessel, there won't be much of a change in our trajectory line. So now we are narrowing that down to 0 meters per second, which we will probably finish off with our RCS if necessary. That was fairly close. So we'll take it. Now we just need to hit the target mark on our nav ball. And we'll use what we have left in our delta V in this stage to make this happen. Zoom out and try to get a good beat on our separation as we increase our speed and try to bring that down as close to 0 as possible. But again, the more speed we add on, the more we're going to have to kill off once we get there, as you can see with the relative speed information there. And 5 kilometers, or 400, 300 meters, 200 meters. Should be hitting 100 meters right about now. And looks like 100 is our best bet. Let's go back to retrograde. We'll reduce that just a little bit so we can get that 100 meter separation back. And then we'll make our transfer. This is about what we had left once we got to Tylo the first time we sent our J2 out, or our J2A out. Alright, let's reduce that back down to as close as separation as possible. We saw it could be closer. So we'll kill it off at about 94. I don't think it's going to allow us to get that back again. Let's point back towards the target mark and go to docking mode. Make sure we are in linear control mode, but keep our RCS off for now. As soon as we are locked back onto the target mark, we can adjust our prograde mark to be pointing more on top of and in line with that. It's pretty close, but it looks like we can make it a little better. So now that we're there, let's make sure the vessel's not moving a whole lot more now. Okay, it's pretty stable. Let's activate our RCS. Let's raise the prograde a tad bit and move it over to the left at the same time a tad bit. Yes, we do still have a decent amount left on our target vessel, but we're going to need it, I think. Let's deactivate the RCS, go back to our map view, take a look at that again. Separation's quite a bit off there now. That's not good. Wonder why it did that. Let's try to correct that. Which we can do by going down and to the left. Let's take a look at how much that's affecting it. Okay, so another burn like that, except twice as long. Just about. It's 4.5 meters. I wonder why it's doing that. We can go ahead and time warp towards it a little bit and then correct it from there, but before we do, let's deactivate our RCS, let's update our quick save, and then let's go ahead and start to warp towards it a little. See the descending node's quite a bit off, that might be part of the reason why. Alright, let's cut it there, let's bring it in a little more, and then cut it about there. We can see our prograde is a bit off there now. Let's activate our RCS and try to bring that over if possible. Remember, it is the opposite of the direction that you're burning it in, so try to keep that in mind as you're making these RCS corrections. We are out of monopropellant now. Uh-oh. It's a good thing we have some in our vessel then. Well, let's just lock on to retrograde and prepare to hit the brakes as soon as we get closer to it. So we'll arrive in about 13 minutes, moving in at about 93.9 meters per second. Let's time warp over. And we'll just use the other vessel's RCS to bring ourselves in and dock up after we, well, we're going to have to keep. It's going to be kind of tricky because there's no more RCS left in the primary vessel, so. Alright, we're watching for 4,000 meters or 4 kilometers, and that's when we're going to punch the brakes. We're going to punch the brakes right about here. We're going to have to be very careful about this because we don't have any RCS left. We're going to have to do this with the engine itself. It's not exactly very difficult or anything. It just requires a lot more precision. Let's reduce our thrust limiter a great deal, close to 0. And slowly bring ourselves down to 0 meters per second. Then we will lock back onto the target node itself. So we're only 3.9 kilometers away now. We can kick our speed up enough to make this happen quickly enough so we're not wasting time. Let's go ahead and throttle up to about 5 meters per second or so. Won't take too long to burn that off once we arrive at the target. Let's point ourselves back to retrograde. Then after it's pointed and locked onto retrograde again, we will update the quick save and warp over to it and finish this up. Let's go ahead and open up this shield, get our docking port prepared, turn them lights on, and let's go ahead and time warp on over. And we should be relatively close right about there. Let's take a look. Oh yeah, we can see it now. Now we're just pretty much waiting to be parked right beside of it so we can do everything necessary to get this docking done. And let's kill the warp there. Begin to kill our speed now. Now, what might be ideal to do here is to take the RCS that's still in the J2A attached to this and transfer that RCS into the command pod vessel. Just have to get those highlighted properly. Alright, so there's those two. Now we just need to find the monopropellant in the command pod and transfer what we have into this. Let's highlight this one, move it in. And once we have all the monopropellant transferred, we will ditch the J2A tank and central stage. Off of this, we'll undock it, and then dock back up to the other vessel using the RCS that we are gaining from that. But we need to keep it relative, so after we transfer into this one, we'll deselect it and select the opposite side and transfer into it. And we'll transfer between these two, and there should still be some more left. Well, maybe not. So we'll just focus on these two next. And we won't worry about these two. As soon as this is full though, let's go ahead and deselect it right about now. We'll select this one. We need to make sure to put about, let's see, 5.16 in this one. We'll stop it at as close to 5.16 as possible to try to keep our weight balance symmetrical. So 5.16, and we need to stop it right about now. Nailed it. Okay. Looks like there's still more left. Try to transfer just a little bit more in. Interesting. Oh, I see why now. Okay, let's just fill it up. That was way off. Because there's still going to be more than enough to fill this one up still. So we are going to have to transfer a little bit more between these two, but that's going to be the tricky part. So there should be still about, I want to say close to 5 monopropellant units left to transfer between these two to the other two. So it should be at about 2 point. Okay, that's pretty close. Let's close this one and open this one. We will transfer 2.82 into this one. Or at least as close to 2.82 as possible. Fairly close. Alright, now let's close it and open up this one. Transfer the rest into it, and we'll be done transferring our monopropellant. And we can undock from this one and dock up to the other one using that monopropellant. Alright, that's that. There should be nothing else at all left on that vessel, so let's go ahead and undock now. Let's see what we have. No fuel at all, just electrical charge. This thing is a dud and it is now useless. Now, we need to set this vessel to target, make sure that it is being controlled from the docking port, and that it is indeed locking on to this docking port and not that vessel and its center of mass. And we'll switch to this and control from its docking port, do the same thing. Make sure that it is set to this docking port as its target. Let's go to map view and then come back out of the map view so we can get our curples out of the way of our nav ball. Set to target. We'll let that realign itself. Looks like it's not going to require too much rotation, but we'll go to rotation mode and rotate it just a hair so the solar panels don't bother one another. Let's deactivate our SCS, reactivate it, make sure we're in linear control mode, activate our RCS, and boost towards it. And try to make sure that our prograde mark is lined up with that target mark as close as possible. It's a little finicky because this vessel does not weigh a whole lot. We're using more monopropellant than we want because of that, but it's okay. Let's make sure that we aim our camera at this docking port to get a better view as we make this approach. And pick up a little more speed. Only takes a little bit of monopropellant to pick up a lot of speed with this. That'll allow us to have a little more of a tighter control over our prograde mark on the target mark. Now we can reduce the speed, make the adjustments as necessary. I think it'll be alright though, regardless. Come on. Come on, little fella. I know you can do it. I have faith in you. I think it'll be okay. Let's just deactivate our RCS, deactivate our SAS, and let it dock up. It's gonna make it, it's just fine. We could actually reactivate the RCS and the SAS and hit the brakes just a tad as we go in though. Alright, now let's deactivate that RCS. Make sure that we are using our control point as the probe core itself like last time, since it's the vessel with all the fuel. There we go. And point ourselves prograde. Go back to staging mode. Now let's take a look at how we are going to get this thing home. Let's make sure that Kerbin is set as our target. Now that's relatively close. We're going to take that and run with it. Let's warp to our apoapsis. Make sure that we are set to retrograde once we arrive there. So we can just take this closest approach and run with it. So we have tons of fuel left here. Let's make sure to remember to set this thrust limiter back up all the way once we arrive. And we'll very quickly burn through that 35 meters per second remaining on that. As useless as that kind of is, to be honest. I get a drink real quick while we're warping. Alright, so here in about 50 seconds or so we'll arrive. Should have plenty of delta V to pull this off. I'd be thoroughly disappointed with myself if this did not work. Where is that other vessel? I did forget to kind of try to move us away from it, so I'm kind of worried about smacking into it now. Where'd you go? Not seeing it. It's making me worry a little bit. Let's find out on our map. We can zoom in nice and close and set it as a target if necessary to really find out where it is. Oh boy, it's ahead of us a little bit. Still can't see it. Aha, okay, we can set it as our target now. Try to spot this thing. Wait, did I just see it over there? Nope, that's not it. Where'd you go? It is a cause for concern, because sometimes the game does have a habit of magnetizing these or something like that. For some reason, they'll smash into each other again during a time warp, and you can say goodbye to your vessel. Where is that thing? I'm a little concerned here. It's not that far away. We should still be able to see it. That's odd, but I'm not seeing it anywhere. I'm gonna lock on the target mode while we're doing all this, so we can be pointed at it and find out just where that thing is. Okay, so it's moving this way. Is it over here? We're almost pointed directly at it. Is it really far enough away to not be a concern? So we barely even did any maneuvering to get away from that thing. Distance is 224,000 meters. Alright, we'll run with that, I guess. Alright, so now that we're out here on the opposite end of our orbit, it is time to reset Kerbin as our target and try to bring this down. Now the best way to do this would be to use the radial mark. I suppose that would be radial out. But I may just use retro for the sake of fuel efficiency, just brute force it in. But before we hit our quick save, as soon as we are locked on to radial out, right about now, I'm gonna update that quick save and let's go back to our map view and see what we can do. I only have 35 meters per second on this stage. It can be our test stage. Alright, so that's bringing it in. That's good. Let's burn through that real fast. Let's make sure we're not burning towards the target somehow and smashing into it. Alright, we are out of fuel. Let's go ahead and stage. Let's move on. Time to come home. How long have they been out? 31 years. Lord. It's quite the mission. 20, 15, 10, and cut. Let's zoom in by focusing on Kerbin and then using the trigger to zoom in. Let's take a look-see and see where we are. Okay. Now we can try to burn, say, normal and bring that down a little bit. We have tons of Delta V left. We're gonna use it up. We're not gonna waste this. Okay, so we need to burn anti-normal to bring that down, of course. You never know though. Unless you're an expert at this kind of stuff. Let's get our orbital lines flush so we can make this as perfect as possible. There we go. Let's bring that on down and cut. And let's do a retro burn. It's going to be a very sensitive burn where we're so far out. So we're barely going to throttle up any at all. But we'll see where that puts us if we do this retro burn correctly. It should put us closer. Close enough. Hope it's retro. Nope, it's prograde. I don't like that. I really don't. Let's cut these outer engines off so we can get this a little more accurate. Shut this one off. Shut that one off. Shut this one off. And shut this one off. And we'll go back to our map view, leaving those open so we can reactivate those more easily. And cut. It's fairly close. We are coming in from the appropriate side, so we will take that, time warp ahead manually, make sure it doesn't mess with our periapsis much, and then let's try to bring ourselves in with plenty of time to try to do our orbital burn upon arrival. Since we are coming in with tons of Delta V, we're going to take advantage of that to reduce our re-entry burn instead of whatever the re-entry burn speed would be coming in, which we'll find out here in just a moment once we arrive back home. can also keep an eye out for Kerbin, but we need to make sure that these are ready to activate as soon as we get here too. See, where will Kerbin be whenever we arrive at Kerbin? We should see our vessel, there it is. So it's going to come all the way around, and the sun will be over there, Kerbin will be where? So we'll be coming in from the back side, kind of pointing towards the sun once we arrive at our periapse. So the Earth or Kerbin will be to the right of the sun on our approach. Or no, to the left. Okay. Or will it be? How is that going to wrap us around? Not very much. Okay. So it will still be to the left, in between us and the sun or Kerbal. Now I've only got about 20 minutes left until I have to cut this. So that's plenty of time to be able to finish this up, thankfully. Let's go back to this view. Try to prepare to get a look at ourselves as we approach Kerbin. So it'll be kind of like right over here somewhere, once we are closer to where we are going to make that encounter. See, right now it's kind of in between us and Kerbal, and it will continue to be there as we come through this line. So right now we're looking pretty much right at it. Should be seeing it coming up somewhere over here, if I'm not mistaken. It's pretty much right in between us and Kerbal now. It's going to be slowly moving over to this side of our view, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, I can see it now. It is right there over top of our vessel. A little tiny glistening dot. Whoops, there we go. There it is. We're not coming in too hot. That's good. Let's go ahead and reactivate these engines. This will allow us to have enough control to be able to do a day side landing instead of a night side. So we can actually see the landing this time. That'll be fantastic. We have plenty of Delta V to kill off that speed and then some. So let's do that. Let's make it happen. Disarm those. And it is almost time to kill off our engines there because we're about to start descending into Kerbin's atmosphere now. So let's go ahead and stop that. Okay, let's bring it in a little closer. Still too much Delta V remaining. It's pretty wild. Let's separate the chutes and the decouplers there. See what we're looking at now. Okay, let's keep bringing that in. Just a wee bit there. I'd like to land at the North Pole, to be honest. That'd be kind of fun. Let's separate our current engines from this stage and bring our There we go. Fantastic. Let's update our quick save now that we're here. And let's go ahead now, since the orbit is relatively stable. Let's finish stabilizing it right about there. It's point normal, since it has the nice little dot in the center of it that we can keep track of. And use whatever fuel we have left to go ahead and make ourselves polar. And we'll get a nice landing at the North Pole while we're at it. Should have enough delta V to pull that off. Certainly hope so, at least. We just have to cut the engines once it's at a 270-degree inclination on our HDG mark there on the nav wall. But we also have to make sure there's enough delta V left to deorbit too. There probably is with the monopropellant alone, but still, don't want to take any chances. Not after everything we've had to do to get to this point. It's burning through that pretty quickly. These are skiff engines though. Let's see what our... Oh, did we fail to... Wow. Didn't make it back in time for that. That's a shame. It's rather unfortunate, but hey, we're still bringing it home. Doesn't matter. We're gonna get the science for it, which at this point our science is money now, since we've already finished our tech tree. So that's irrelevant. We're almost there. Hopefully there's gonna be enough fuel to pull it off. If not, oh well. It's better to not risk it. See how much delta V there is. It's about, what, 25 seconds of burn time remaining? Saying 10 seconds now. 9, 8, 7. It's gonna be fairly close. Let's cut it right there. How much delta V do we have now? 100 and some meters per second. Let us go ahead and try to reduce that, and hopefully still have enough. Ouch, that's not good. Huh, okay. Well then, let's do it the hard way. Like we had to do at Tylo. I don't want to have to reload that quick save again. Don't like to do that, really. Let's go ahead and undock. Let that reorient itself. Go to docking mode, activate our RCS. We will burn towards the retrograde mark until we are out of the monopropellant. The real concern here is I doubt we're actually going to land at the North Pole because of this, but we have it to where we could if we would have done it correctly. But it's irrelevant. We'll just watch the camera view. Whenever it shifts, we'll know that we are set up to deorbit. Turn our RCS off, reorient to the retrograde mark, make sure it's set to surface, and then reactivate the RCS and continue burning. And once we see that camera flip around a little bit, we'll know that we are deorbiting. If it does, hopefully there's enough monopropellant. I doubt there's gonna be though. Shoot. Okay, then let's just reload this quick save and let's just get them home. I only have 13 minutes or so, give or take, left to fool around here. I think I'm fooling around too much. It's all in good fun, though. Okay. Now, where were we? Aha. Now, you know what? I'm gonna do it again. but I just need to make sure to have more than 100 meters per second of delta V remaining. We need about probably between 2 and 400. Alright, now let's do this. Oops. Oh no! Haha, that was bad. Yikes. I'm not gonna stand for that. Oh gosh, all the mistakes. This is what happens when I have so many large gaps in between these episodes. I'm not playing as much as I should be these days. Oy vey. Okay. One more time. Third time's the charm, right? Let's get it right this time. The one thing I refuse to do is use a maneuver node though, to make this more efficient or whatever. I'm not a fan of maneuver nodes. I'm not a fan of stuff that you see PC users use like mech-jub. I mean, there are extenuating circumstances where it can be useful and necessary, but most of the time I don't find any of that stuff necessary. Like maneuver nodes or mech-jub or any of that. I think it just kills the experience myself. It's just like pretty much letting the game play itself. I don't like that. Like maneuver nodes, I kinda get it. But mech-jub, no, I certainly don't. Just takes away the fun. Either way, we're going to make sure to stop at about 1400 meters, or 400 meters per second of delta V, and just take what we can get to try to narrow down that landing. I don't know if it'll be enough to get us to land where we are wanting to land, but if not, oh well, at least we'll be landing and coming home finally, being done with it. Quickly approaching that point where we need to stop or burn. It's about time to cut ourselves off. Right about now. 400 on the dot, look at that. Okay, let's switch to surface mode, make sure we're locked on a retrograde. Still not going to be enough to land at that northern pole though, that's a shame. Alright, let's kill it. As soon as that shifts though, let's see what we still have left to work with. That should already be enough. Still not? I'll be. Alright, let's continue to burn. That's certainly enough there. We can try to use whatever we still have left. 81 meters per second. We'll use that to see if we can't move ourselves around just a little bit more. I doubt it's going to be enough to make a difference though. And even so, we still won't be entering the atmosphere early enough. I don't know if we retro burn now. We may be able to bring it into where we'll land a little closer to it, but... See, that might get us a tad bit closer to it, but we're still not going to land at the North Pole, which is rather unfortunate. Let's, there's something else we can still do though. Before we undock this time, let's lock SAS mode instead of retro, then we'll undock. And wait for that to move away from us just a hair there. kind of go ahead and manually move over to retrograde, I suppose. Alright, that's fine. Let's go ahead and lock on to normal. And then activate our RCS in docking mode and begin to burn towards normal. We may be able to try to normalize a little more. We'll just burn what all monopropellant that we still have remaining until we are out to try to normalize and get it closer to the North Pole. I'm pretty determined to land at the North Pole, I'm sorry. But at least this time we know for sure we're going to land back at home. And I've only got about 6 minutes left to do this. I'm going to wrap this up before I get a phone call that will cut my internet connection off. It's kind of like living back in the 90s. Someone trying to call your home and they get that loud screeching noise that tells them that you're connected to the internet, and it kind of screws up your internet connection. It's like that except for a high speed, modern internet connection speed. It's kind of terrible. We'll see just how much this affects our degree of inclination once we are done. It's barely even moving it at all, though. It's already moved it 1 degree. Hopefully it'll move it 1 more by the time we're done here. Still nothing. Still a 291. What a shame. Well, it looks like that's going to be it for us there. Alright, let's point ourselves towards retrograde, make sure we are set on surface mode. Let's go back to staging mode. Let's get rid of the excess and delta V information there. And look at our failure again, since I took too long apparently. Let's go ahead and warp down, take a look at our line, see just how much that changed it. Still not going to be enough. Oh well. Let's prepare to cut that time warp, so we can then close our solar panels and close our docking port shield there as we pass right directly over the North Pole. Boo! Let's rotate, get a good view as we're coming in. Hello, Kerbin. Out the window, I can see you. Can't see squat out those windows though. What is that over to our right? Oh, it's our probe, hey. You can actually still see that thing, huh? Let's take a look. There you are. Hello, probe. Welcome home as well. Except you're gonna smash into the ground. Oh no, you're gonna smash into the ocean as well. Alright, let's get this over with. Do this entry burn. Check our ablator as we come in, as it does jack diddly and squat to it compared to how bad it would have been. And let's go ahead and activate our drones. Where'd our friend go? Did it already smash into the surface? I suppose it did. Okay. Once those fully deployed, we should be at about 2,500 meters. We'll just wait until we're nice and close to the surface to deploy the other chutes, and they better deploy is all I can say. After all this, the staging better not mess up on us. Let's go ahead and do that now. What's our speed? 6.8, I'll take it. Let's prepare to kill that time warp. Oh, we finally made it back. Phew. Alright then. We do have all that science with us, right? Let's check it out. Tylo's Highlands, EVA report, surface sample, atmosphere, seismic, crew report, lightstone, gravity scan, temperature scan. Fantastic. Let's check our accomplishments out. Returned from Tylo. And we have returned home from the surface of Tylo. Thank God we're done with that. Let's recover the vessel. Let's bring them home. They're probably going to level up a good little bit after all that. Oof. Now, to find out where we are off to next really quickly, I've only got about a minute or so remaining here. There's all of our signs, yay. All the parts that we've recovered, yay. They leveled up all the way to level 4. Lord, okay, that's good. Alright, let's go to our mission control and see what we have. Where is our World Record Society contract? Explore Val, you don't say. Orbit Val and return to orbit from, or return to Kerbin from orbit of Val. Alright, so there's our goal. We are going to send a station core into orbit around Val, and then send another vessel out to dock up with it, transfer between, and return from. And then, after we do that, we'll be landing on Val and returning from Val. There is one of my most absolute favorite Easter eggs on Val that we are going to attempt to land at. And it's going to be very fun, very cool to check out. Let's go ahead and take that, and the bring a ice chunk from the surface of Val mission. I don't want to do that. I don't want to take that just yet, because I don't want what happened last time to happen again. So we're not going to do that just yet. I'll take the data from the space around Val though. And let's see what else we have. Looks like that's it for now. So there's our mission, and our missions for the next episodes. The next, I want to say probably 4 episodes. Send that station core out to Val, and dock up with it after that, return from it, go back out there again, land and return from that, and we'll be done with Val. Then we'll most likely have to move on to Lathe, since for some reason we did a flyby of Lathe. But that's it, that's our goals for the next few episodes. Let's go ahead and make sure our tech tree is finished off. Looking good. See if we can't get any money from the science that we have now, if we want to. So raise that commitment. Let's see, we can get 176,000 funds for that if we want. But we're not going to do that. We're doing okay on our funds right now. There's nothing else we need to do. Let's update our quick save and then our main save. And we'll be done for now. And that's it for now. Thank you all for watching. Hope it's been helpful, educational, or just plain fun to watch. Very much looking forward to going out to Val. I'll keep going until I get that phone call that cuts me off, so be prepared for that abrupt cutoff. But very quickly I'm going to go to Val and check out its information and characteristics. Get a sneak peek at this. This is Val. It's a very icy little moon around Jewel. Just gonna go ahead and check its information. Val was one of the last moons of Jewel to be discovered. Frustrated scientists kept attempting to wipe it off the lenses of their telescopes. Eventually, after a rash of returned telescopes, Advanced Optics Co. or Company finally decided to just tell them it was an actual object in the sky. Okay. Now how about the gravity? Not too high at all. It's about a fifth of Kerbin's. Its orbital insertion, say its highest orbital point is 2,400 meters or 2,406 kilometers. So that's not too bad. It's relatively similar to another moon that we've already been to, if I'm not mistaken. Kind of like Ike. How about the Mun? It's a little closer to the Mun, I would say, than Ike. Still, not that bad. Let's go back over there to Val. Yes, I'm not entirely sure where that Easter egg is, though. I'm gonna have to check on that before we go back here, but I remember it being somewhere around this bottom part of Val. Somewhere around here. Can't quite remember, but I'll make sure before we go. But yes, here is our next destination. It is the second closest moon to Jool in the Jool system. And after that, I suspect we'll be heading to Lathe, which I mentioned in previous episodes. It doesn't have too many surfaces to land on reliably. It's better to land at the pole, if possible, the south or the northern pole. And we'll be colonizing Lathe, much like we did Eve, but we'll also have to do a return from Lathe at some point, but it is relatively easy to do compared to Eve. See, it doesn't have as much gravity as Kerbin. It's got a weaker atmosphere, which its atmospheric height is 50,000, Kerbin's is 70,000, Eve's is, what, 90 or 100,000? Won't be as bad. But hopefully it doesn't take us there just yet. Hopefully we move on from Val to Boppen Pole, and then go out to Elu, and make our way to Drez, and then make our way to Moho, and then wrap it up with Lathe, and then finally our return back to Eve to try to return from the surface of Eve. But that's an outlier of all of our future missions. Our next one primarily being Val, which we will get to in the next few episodes. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and cut it off there. I'll see you all in the next episode, most likely this Friday. But until then, again, thank you for watching. Hope it's been helpful. Hope you've been enjoying the journey so far, and I will see you all again soon. Goodbye.